I've often had customers that are new to raw feeding raise their concerns that they may be doing something wrong because most of the internet and vet raw influencers perpetuate the myth that if raw food does not match NRC requirements, then it's lacking. And that's incorrect. Raw food is not lacking and it does not have to match the high values recommended by NRC. If you are feeding the 5 components that I discussed in Raw Feeding is Easy, then you'll be covered. But let's explore and start by looking at how NRC gets to these requirements and how they're developed. So now the NRC is the National Research Center, and they make recommendations to the American government on science and technology. A branch of the NRC, the National Academy of Sciences, publishes recommendations on what is required for an artificial synthetic diet, and that's for pets, cows, pigs, sheep, horses, etc. So regulatory bodies for animal feed in different countries take NRC recommendations, tweak them according to their needs, and then make and publish recommendations or requirements for feed manufacturers. So for America, that's AFCO. In Europe, it's FEDIAF. In South Africa, DAF, and so on. In South Africa, it's required that any pellet or raw complete meal follows AFCO and NRC values. So you think, what's wrong with that? Well, NRC don't do any clinical trials or studies. What they do is they look at data that has been done and then they extrapolate the data. They look at trials and then extrapolate the data. And from there they make the recommendations. So the data that's extrapolated from the different studies is not necessarily species specific. For example, baby chicks were used to evaluate the availability of copper in pet foods. And then these findings are then incorporated into NRC recommendations for copper. The studies that are done in a lab environment. This means it is a completely sterile, unnatural environment. There's no natural light, no grass, no soil, and trace minerals like iron, manganese, zinc, copper, cobalt, selenium, and iodine, which are found in the environment naturally, are not found in a lab. During clinical trials, dogs are fed a purified diet. Now, purified diets are typically casein, cornstarch, and soybean oil. Ultra-processed based diet. Synthetic vitamins and minerals will be added to the purified diet, and depending on what is being tested for, the specific vitamin or mineral will be withheld or overfed to see what symptoms occur. When a deficiency is produced, the vitamin will be added back into the diet until the deficiency is rectified, thereby prescribing what the minimum is for a synthetic diet. So depending on the trial, the dogs are put to death, their organs are examined, or they're used for the next clinical trial. So now we know that natural vitamins and minerals are twice as bioavailable as synthetics. There are variations in the structure of synthetic vitamins and differences in intestinal absorption, plasma, tissue kinetics, cellular uptake, and elimination. It's plastic compared to natural. So if you follow NRC requirements, then according to NRC, raw food is lacking. It's lacking in zinc, vitamin E, vitamin D, manganese, and possibly choline. For example, if I fed my dog a meal of steak, liver, kidney, spleen, beef heart, and chicken necks, my diet would be deficient, according to NRC, in zinc, manganese, vitamin D, vitamin E, and choline. And I would have to supplement with synthetics or do a fine balance of adding mussels for the manganese and zinc requirement. So how do wolves survive in the wild? They are certainly not snacking on green-lipped mussels or chia seeds. It's illogical. So I did a deep dive into NRC publications to understand how they got their values. So I'll start with manganese today. So manganese is ubiquitous, meaning it's in all around us, found in the soil and in water. There is no real understanding of how much manganese is required for dogs. And clinical cases of manganese deficiency have never been reported to occur in dogs or cats. So research has surmised that if a dog is eating a practical diet, i.e. whole raw foods and not synthetic, the dog would get adequate amounts of manganese in their diet. In a practical diet, sources of manganese are bones, liver, spleen and pancreas. Researchers then looked at the amount of manganese used in an artificial lick fed to 2-day-old calves removed from their mother and raised on a purified diet, and concluded the requirement of 1.6 milligrams of manganese is suitable for cats and dogs. So they compared the requirements for a 6-day-old calf taken away from its mother, fed an artificial lick with synthetic minerals in, was adequate for the calf, so thereby, even though they don't know what the requirement is for cats and dogs, they reckon that that is suitable and that is what's required for cats and dogs. So everybody's running around trying to get their raw food to measure up to 1.6 milligrams of manganese, and that requirement actually comes from an artificial diet designed for baby calves that were removed from their mothers. So in the next couple of podcasts I'll carry on. We'll take a look at vitamin E, we'll take a look at vitamin D, and we'll take a look at zinc and choline. So I think we need to learn to become critical thinkers. If you can become a critical thinker, it will certainly benefit you, your kids and your pets. Thanks for watching.